What's up everyone, Steven here from Techmaker.tv. In this episode, I want to show you how you can use Stimulus Reflex to add reactiveness to your Rails applications in just a few lines of code. So as you can see here on my screen, I'm changing something over here and it's just seamlessly and smoothly updating this entire element with next to zero code, which I'll show you in just a second. If you want to follow along with the full development of this simple project management app from scratch, you can check out our website, techmaker.tv, or check the link down in the description. But you should be able to follow along pretty well even if you don't build this entire thing out from the beginning. Also, be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. But with all of that said, let's jump in. To kick things off, we just need to install Stimulus Reflex, and you can see here that I'm in my Rails app directory. So I'm going to run a couple of commands here: bundle add Stimulus Reflex. So this is going to go ahead and add the gem to my gem file and then bundle install. And then I need to run another command to actually set everything up. So we'll say bundle exec Rails Stimulus Reflex install. And I misspelled stimulus, which I saw at the last second, so we'll fix that. Once that finishes, we should be basically ready to get started. So I'm just going to start up my server and jump back over into my code. So again, if you want to follow along with the whole project development, feel free to check that out on the website, but we need to just jump into our projects show page. So down in here, we have this drop down, which is using some Bootstrap stuff. And then inside of here, we have this task status options rather. So each one of those is a drop down item. So I will show you in the browser where that's happening. So let's see here. I need to log back in, I guess. And we can see here that this is where these drop downs are pulling from. And so what we want to do is when we click on one of these things, we want to essentially kick off a reflex. So in order to do that, we can actually add that directly on this A tag here. So I'm going to go ahead and split this onto multiple lines to give us a little more room. And to add a stimulus reflex, or to add a reflex, we just say data reflex equals. And then what we do is we say we want to have our on click, so we specify the event, and then we add a pointer to the reflex that we want to kick off. So I'm going to say, let's call this a status reflex. And then you can tell it with this pound sign which method you want it to run. So I'm going to run a method called change. And so none of this exists yet. We're going to create all of this, but that's what I want to be kicked off. And we could actually maybe see this a little bit better by putting everything on its own line here. And then I'm going to add, so we can send data to the reflex by adding extra data attributes here. So we can say something like data-id equals, and then I'm going to give it my task ID. And we'll need that in order to look the task up in order to change the status. And then the last, I'm going to say data.status, and this is going to be the new status that I want to change to. And so I need to give it the status 1. And so really quick, just in case you haven't been following along, if we look at the task model, we have this status options here, which we use in various places. So back over here, when you see status 0, that's the readable version, and then we have sort of a lowercase with dashes version, which we store in the database. So this sort of represents or reflects what you might have like in the options list in the edit form or something like that. But anyway, you can follow along the previous episodes to check that out if you want more information. So this is basically it. So we've added these 3 lines to our A tag, or these 3 attributes to our A tag. So what we need to do next is actually create the reflex. To do that, all we need to do is go back to our terminal. I'm going to go ahead and stop the server, and I'm going to run quick command rails g stimulus reflex, and I'm just going to call it status. And that's it. So then we'll start our server back and pop back over into the code whenever that's running. So now if we look in this reflexes directory inside of app, now we have this status reflex. And I'm going to go ahead and just remove all these comments. And remember what we said over here was that we wanted a method called change. So let me just make sure that I typed all that right. Status reflex change. And so we'll write a method over here, change. Now, whenever you hit this reflex method, there's some stuff that's made available to you automatically. And so what we want ultimately to do is to look up a task equals task.find, and then we want to do some stuff, and then we want to update that task with a new status, which is going to be some other stuff. And so what we have access to is this thing where we can say element, and then that has a data set on it. And the data attributes that we specified, so we have data-id and data-status, so those come in as symbols. So we have element.dataset with a symbol ID, and that maps to this data ID. And then we have over here, we want to update the status to be element.dataset and then grab the status. So that's it. So that's 5 lines. That's really 3 lines of code, and then if you want to count these because they're on different lines, that's 5 lines of code. So really very, very little code. So now let's go see what happens if we change the status. So let's refresh this page. And let's see what's going on. I don't know why I keep getting logged out every time I restart my server. Okay, so anyway, we're in now. Now let's see what happens if I change this. So you can see that with next to no work, this thing is fully hooked up. So I'm still kind of studying and reading on exactly how this works in the background. But what I think is happening so far is essentially when any sort of reflex method gets run, it re-renders whatever page that reflex came from. And so we can look at, for example, our projects controller. And so I think what's happening is we trigger this change method, and then because we're on the show page, it's actually just re-rendering the show page back to us. And it's doing a diff, and it's only updating the things that changed. So it's sort of like React in that sense, where React is only updating the part of the page that changed whenever there's some kind of change to the data or whatever. So anyway, I'll offer better explanation in future videos as I learn more. But I thought this would be a cool thing to go ahead and add to this project, and I think this is a really exciting tool that's coming out or that's out. So definitely check out the docs and take some time to play around with it. I think it's well worth your time. So with all of that said, in the next episode we're going to be adding, so we're going to actually be saving the drag and drop stuff, because right now if you refresh this doesn't stick. And then in the future I'm going to be adding more stuff related to Stimulus Reflex, another tool called Cable Ready. So we're going to broadcast changes out to Teams, which we still need to set up Teams. So there's a lot of work left to do on this little project management app. This is the 4th episode. I don't know how many we're going to do. It's probably going to be more than 10, maybe more than 20. Who knows? We'll take it as far as we feel like. So with all of that said, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, hit the bell icon if you want to stay up to date with what we're doing, and I will talk to you in the next episode.